Latin names of the plants were printed on tags attached to them, but the print's fading out. Those ones there are the oldest plants on Earth, survivors from the age of the giant fern forests. Of course, in this semi-tropical climate, some of our rarest plants, such as the Venus flytrap. You know what that is, Doctor? The Venus flytrap.
An insectivorous plant.
Yes, it feeds on insects. It has to be kept under glass from early fall to late spring. And when it went under glass, my son Sebastian had to provide it with fruit flies flown in at great expense from a Florida laboratory that used fruit flies for experiments in genetics. Well, I can't do that. I just can't do that. It's not the expense.
But the effort.
Yes. So goodbye, Venus flytrap. Like so much else. I don't know why, but I suddenly feel I can lean on your shoulder, Doctor.
Kukrevich. It's a Polish word that means sugar. Let's just make it simple and call me Dr. Sugar.
Well, now, Dr. Sugar, you've seen Sebastian's garden.
It's like a well-groomed jungle.
That's how he meant it to be. Nothing was accidental. Everything was planned and designed in Sebastian's life and his work.
What was your son's work, Mrs. Venable, besides this garden?
As many times as I've had to answer that question, you know, it still shocks me a little to realize that Sebastian Venable, the poet, is still unknown outside a small coterie of friends, including his mother.
Oh?
You see, strictly speaking, his life was his occupation.
I see.
No, you don't see yet, but before I'm through, you will. Sebastian was a poet. That's what I meant when I said his life was his work, because the life of a poet is the work of a poet, and vice versa. I mean, you can't separate them. I mean, a poet's work is his life, and his life is his work in a special sense. I talked myself breathless and dizzy. Thank you.
Mrs. Venable, did your doctor okay this thing?
What thing?
You're meeting this girl that you think is responsible for your son's death.
I've waited months to face her because I couldn't get to St. Mary's to face her. I've had her brought here to my house. I won't collapse. She'll collapse. I mean, her lies will collapse. Not my truth, not the truth. Forward march, Dr. Sugar. We made it. Sit down, Doctor. I'm devoting all that's left of my life to the defense of a dead poet's reputation. Sebastian had no public name as a poet. He didn't want one. He refused to have one. He dreaded, abhorred false values that come from being publicly known, from fame, from personal exploitation. Oh, he'd say to me, Violet, mother, you're going to outlive me.
And now what made him think that?
Poets are always clairvoyant. And he had rheumatic fever when he was 15, and it affected a heart valve, and he wouldn't stay out of water, and so forth. Violet, mother, when I'm gone, it will be yours. In your hands to do whatever you please with. Meaning, of course, his future recognition that he did want. He wanted it after his death, when it couldn't disturb him. Then he did want to offer his work to the world. All right, Doctor, have I made my point? Here is my son's work, Doctor. Here is his life moving on.
Poem of Summer.
Poem of Summer and the date of the summer. There were 25 of them. He wrote one poem a year, which he printed himself on an 18th century hand press at his atelier in the French Quarter, so no one but he could see it.
He wrote one poem a year.
For each summer that we traveled together. The rest of the 9 months of the year were really only a preparation.
9 months.
The length of a pregnancy, yes.
The poem was hard to deliver.
Yes. Without me, impossible. He wrote no poem last summer, Doctor.
Oh, he died last summer.
Without me, he died last summer. That was his last summer's poem. One long ago summer, and why am I thinking of this? My son Sebastian said to me, Mother, listen to this. He read me Herman Melville's description of the Encantadas, the Galapagos Islands. He read me that description and said we had to go there. And so we did go there that summer on a chartered boat, a four-masted schooner as close as possible to the sort of a boat that Melville must have sailed on. We saw the Encantadas, but on the Encantadas we saw something Melville hadn't written about. We saw the great sea turtles crawl up out of the sea for their annual egg laying. Once a year, the female of the sea turtles crawls up out of the equatorial sea onto the blazing sand beach to dig a pit in the sand and deposit her eggs there. And when it's finished, the exhausted female turtle goes back to the sea half dead. She never even sees her offspring. But we did. Sebastian knew exactly when the sea turtle eggs would be hatched out, and we returned in time for it. The narrow beach, the color of caviar, was all in motion, but the sky was in motion too, full of flesh-eating birds, and the noise of the birds, the horrible savage cry of the
carnivorous birds.
over the narrow black beach of the Encantadas as the just-hatched sea turtles scrambled out of the sand pits and started their race to the sea.
Race to the sea?
To escape the flesh-eating birds that made the sky almost as black as the beach and the sand all alive. As the hatched sea turtles made their dash for the sea, well, the birds hovered and swooped to attack. They were diving down on the hatched sea turtles, turning them over to expose their soft underside, tearing the underside open and rending and eating its flesh.
Mrs. Venable, what was it about this spectacle on the beach that fascinated your son?
My son was looking, let's just say he was interested in sea turtles.
You started to say that your son was looking for something?
All right. I started to say my son was looking for God. All poets look for God. All good poets do. And they have to look harder for him than priests do, without the help of such famous guidebooks and well-organized expeditions as priests have with their scriptures and churches. All right, I've said it. My son was looking for God. I mean for a clear image of him. He spent that whole blazing equatorial day watching that thing on the beach of the Encantadas until it was too dark to see it. And when he couldn't see it anymore, he came back and said, well, now I've seen it. And he meant God.
I see.
For several days after that, he had a fever. He was delirious with it. I took over command of the ship. We sailed north by east into cooler waters. What? Oh, elixir of survival. Isn't it nice at the drugstore? Keep me alive. Now, where was I? Oh, yes, that long ago summer. I got this cable from my late husband's lawyer. Mr. Venable, critically ill, stopped. Once you stop, need you stop. Immediate return advised most strongly, stop. Cable time of arrival.
And did you go back to your husband?
I made the hardest decision of my life. I stayed with my son. And from then on, oh, we still lived in a world of light and shadow, but the shadow was becoming almost as luminous as the light.
Don't you want to sit down now?
Yes, indeed I do before I fall down. Are your hind legs still on you?
My what? Oh, hind legs, yes.
Well, then you're not a donkey. You're certainly not a donkey because I've been talking the hind legs off a donkey, several donkeys. But I wanted to make it clear to you that the world lost a great deal too when I lost my son last summer. You would have liked my son. He would have been charmed by you. My son Sebastian was not a family snob or a money snob, but he was a snob. He was a snob about personal charm in people. He insisted upon good looks in people around him, and he had a perfect little court of young and beautiful people around him always, wherever he was, When he was here in New Orleans or in New York or on the Riviera, in Paris, Venice, he always had a little entourage of the beautiful, the talented, and the young.
Your son was young, Mrs. Venable?
Both of us were young and stayed young, Doctor.
Can I see a photograph of your son, Mrs. Venable?
Yes, indeed you could. I'm glad you asked to see one. I am going to show you not one photograph, but two. Here is my son, Sebastian, in a page boy Renaissance costume at a mass ball in Cannes. Here is my son, Sebastian, in the same costume at a mass ball in Venice. These two pictures were taken 20 years apart, Doctor. Which is the older one?
This photograph looks older.
The photograph looks older, but not the subject. It takes character to refuse to grow old, Doctor. I mean, to successfully refuse to grow old. It calls for discipline, abstention. One cocktail before dinner, not 2, 4, 6. A single lean chop and lime juice on a salad. At restaurants famed for rich dishes.
Miss Venable, Miss Holly's mother and brother are...
Hi, Ebba.
Carla, dear, we're here.
They're here.
Wait upstairs in my upstairs living room for me. Get them upstairs. I don't want them at that window during this talk. Let's get away from the window.
Mrs. Venable,
Yes.
did your son have a, well, sort of a personal, well, private life did your son have?
That's a question I wanted you to ask me.
Why?
Well, I haven't heard the girl's story except indirectly in a watered-down version, being too ill to go to hear directly. But I've gathered enough to know that it's a hideous attack on my son's moral character, which, being dead, he can't defend himself from. I have to be the defender. Now, sit down, listen to me. Before you hear whatever you're going to hear from the girl when she gets here, my son was chaste, not C-H-A-S-E-D. Well, he was chaste in that way of spelling it with his looks and his charm. I mean, he was C-H-A-S-T-E chaste.
I understood what you meant, Mrs. Venable.
And you believe me, don't you?
Well, yes, but,
But what?
no. Chastity at, what age was your son last summer?
40, baby. We really didn't count birthdays.
And you lived a celibate life?
Strictly as if he vowed to. I know this sounds like vanity, but I was actually the only one really in his life who satisfied the demands he made of people. Time and again, my son Sebastian would dismiss people, let them go, because their attitude toward him was not as pure as my son Sebastian demanded. We were a famous couple. People didn't speak of Sebastian and his mother or Mrs. Venable and her son. It was Violet and Sebastian are staying at the Lido. Sebastian and Violet have taken a house in Biarritz for the season. And every appearance, every time we appeared, attention was centered on us. Everyone else eclipsed. Vanity? Oh no, Doctor, you can't call it that.
I didn't call it that.
It wasn't folie de grandeur. It was grandeur.
I see.
An attitude toward life that's hardly been known in the world since the great Renaissance princes were crowded out of their palaces and gardens by successful shopkeepers.
I see.
Most people's lives, what are they but trails of debris? Long trails of debris with nothing to clean it all up, but finally death. My son Sebastian and I constructed, each day we would carve out each day of our lives like a piece of sculpture. Yes, we left behind us a trail of days like a gallery of sculpture. But last summer, and I can't forgive him for it, not even now that he's paid for it with his life. He let in this vandal,
The girl that I'm going
that you're going to meet here this afternoon. He admitted this vandal, and with her tongue for a hatchet, she's gone about smashing our legend, the memory of
Mrs.
my...
Venable, what do you think is her reason?
Lunatics don't have reason.
I mean, what do you think is her motive?
Oh, what a question. We put the bread in her mouth and the clothes on her back. The role of a benefactor is worse than thankless, doctor. It's the role of a victim, yes. Sacrificial victim, yes, doctor, they want your blood. They want your blood on the altar steps of their outrageous egos.
You mean she resented him?
No, they can't shut her up at St. Mary's.
I thought she'd been there for months.
I mean, keep her still there. She babbles. They couldn't shut her up in Cabeza de Lobo or at the clinic in Paris. She babbled. Babbled, smashing my son's reputation. Even when she was flown down here at the airport, she babbled a bit of her story before they could whisk her in an ambulance to St. Mary's. This is a reticule, doctor. It's a catch-all, carry-all bag for an elderly lady, which I turned into last summer. Would you open it for me? My hands are stiff. And fish out some cigarettes.
I don't have any matches.
Well, I believe there's a lighter on the table in the box.
Yes, there is. I would have torch.
So shines a good deed in a naughty world, Dr. Sugar.
Mrs. Venable,
Yes.
in your letter last week you mentioned a fund of some kind, an endowment fund.
I wrote you that my lawyers were setting up the Sebastian Venable Memorial Foundation to subsidize the work of young people like you who are pushing out the frontiers of art and science but who have a financial problem. You have a financial problem, don't you, Doctor?
Yes. Yes, we have that problem. My work is such a new and radical thing that people in charge of state funds are naturally a little scared of it. They keep us on a small budget. I mean, so small that, well, I need a separate ward for my patients. I need trained assistants. But the most important part is getting the right patients. You know, not just criminal psychopaths the state turns over for my operation because, well, it's risky. Now, I don't want to turn you off my work at Lions View, Mrs. Venable, but I have to be honest with you. There is a great deal of risk in the operation. I mean, every time you enter the brain with a foreign object,
Yes.
even a needle-thin knife,
Yes.
in the hands of skilled surgeons' fingers,
Yes.
there is still a great deal of risk in this operation.
Yeah, but you said it pacifies them, it quiets them down, and suddenly makes them peaceful.
Yeah, that much we already know, but,
But what?
well, it could be 10 years before we ever find out if the immediate benefits of the operation will be lasting or passing. And even if they're still being, this is what haunts me most about it. Any possibility afterwards of reconstructing a totally sound person. It may be that that person will always be limited. Now, relieved of acute disturbances, but limited, Mrs. Venable.
Yeah, but what a blessing to them, Doctor, to be just peaceful. To be just suddenly peaceful after all the horror after those nightmares.
Mrs. Venable, I can't guarantee that the lobotomy is going to stop her babbling.
But after the operation, who would believe her, Doctor?
My God. Mrs. Venable, suppose after meeting this girl and observing the girl and listening to this story that she babbles, I still shouldn't feel that her condition is intractable enough. I mean, to justify the risk of... Suppose I shouldn't feel that non-surgical treatments such as insulin shock or electroshock therapy...
She's had all that at St. Mary's. There's nothing else left for her.
But if I disagreed with you?
That's just part of the question. Finish the question, Doctor.
would you still be interested in my work at Lions View? I mean, would the Sebastian Venable Memorial Foundation still be interested in it?
Aren't we always more concerned about a thing that we're interested in personally, Doctor?
Mrs. Venable. You're such an innocent person, it doesn't occur to you. And obviously it doesn't occur to you that anyone less innocent than you are could possibly interpret this form of a subsidy as, well, sort of a bribe.
Name it that, I don't care. There's just two things to remember. She's a destroyer. My son was a creator. Now, if my honesty shocked you, pick up your little black bag without the subsidy in it and run away from this garden. Nobody's heard our conversation but you and I, Dr. Sugar.
Miss Venable.
What? What is it?
Miss Venable. Miss Holly's here with...
Oh my God, there she is in the window. I told you I didn't want her to enter my house again. I told you to meet them at the door, lead them around the side of the house to the garden, and you didn't listen. I'm not ready to face her. I have to have my 5 o'clock cocktail first to fortify me. Take my chair inside. Dr. Sugar, you may stay in the garden if you wish to, or run out of the garden if you wish to, but I'm going to have my 5 o'clock daiquiri frozen before I face her.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Sit down and be still till your family comes outside. What did you take out of that box on the table?
Just a cigarette, sister.
Put it back in the box.
Too late. Already lighted.
Give it here.
Oh, please let me smoke, sister.
Give it here.
Please, Sister Felicity.
Catherine, give it here. You know you're not allowed to smoke at St. Mary's.
We're not at St. Mary's. This is an afternoon out.
But you're still in my charge. I can't permit you to smoke because the last time you smoked, you dropped a lighted cigarette on your dress and started a fire.
Oh, I did not start a fire. I just burned a hole in my skirt because I was half unconscious under medication.
Catherine, give it here.
Don't be such a bully.
Disobedience will have to be paid for later.
All right, I'll pay for it later.
Give me that cigarette or I'll make a report that will put you right back on the violent ward if you don't.
I'm not being violent, sister.
Give me that cigarette. I'm holding my hand out for it.
All right, take it. Here, take it.
Oh, you burned me with it.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
You stuck that lighted cigarette right in my hand.
I'm sick of being Boston bullied. Sit down. There goes the wearing mixer, and Violet's about to have her 5 o'clock frozen daiquiri. You could set a watch by it. We're in Sebastian's garden. My God, I can still cry.
Did you have any medication before you went out?
No, I didn't have any. Will you give me some, sister?
I can't. I wasn't told to. However, I think the doctor will give you something.
That young blonde man I bumped into?
Yes, the young doctor's a specialist from another hospital.
What hospital?
A word to the wise is sufficient.
I knew I was being watched. He's in the window staring out at me.
Sit down and be still. Your family is coming outside.
Lions View, is it, Doctor?
Sit down,
Is
dear.
it Lions View, Doctor?
Be still.
When can I stop running down that steep white street in Cabeza de Lobo?
Catherine, dear, sit down.
I loved him, sister. Why wouldn't he let me save him? I tried to hold on to his hand, but he struck me away and ran in the wrong direction, sister.
Catherine, dear, be still.
Bless you, sister.
Thank you.
The doctor's still in the window, but he's too blind to hide behind the window curtains. He catches the light. He shines through them. We were going to Blonde's. Blonde's were next on the menu.
Be still now. Quiet, dear.
Cousin Sebastian said he was famished for blondes. Fit up with the dark ones and famished for blondes. I think he'd already booked us to Copenhagen or Stockholm. Fit up with the dark ones, famished for light ones. That's how he talked about people, as if they were items on the menu. That one's delicious looking, that one is appetizing, or that one is not appetizing. I think it's because he was really nearly half starved from living on pills and salads.
Stop it, Catherine. Be still.
He liked me, and so I left him. If he'd kept hold of Sebastian suddenly said to me last summer, "Let's fly north, little bird. I want to walk under those radiant, cold northern lights." Somebody said once or wrote once, "We're all of us children in a vast kindergarten trying to spell God's name with the wrong alphabet blocks." Oh, I think it's me they're calling. They call me sister, sister.
Oh, Catherine, dear Catherine. Well. Don't she look fine, George?
Uh-huh.
They send you to the beauty parlor whenever you're going to have a family visit. Other times you look awful. You can't have a compact or lipstick or anything made of metal because they're afraid you'll swallow it.
Oh, well, I think she looks just splendid, don't you, George?
Can't we talk to her without the nun for a minute?
Oh, yes, I should think that's all right, sister.
Excuse me, Sister Felicity, this is my mother, Mrs. Holly, and my brother George.
How do you do?
This is Sister Felicity.
Oh, we are so happy that Catherine's in St. Mary's. So very grateful for all you're doing for her.
We do the best we can for her, Mrs. Holly.
Oh, I'm sure you do. Yes, well, do you believe it would be all right for a private chat with our Catherine?
I'm not supposed to let her out of my sight.
Oh, it would only be for a minute, and you could sit in the hall or in the garden, and we would call you right down here to look at the private part of our little talk this over.
Jesus, what are you up to, huh, sister? Are you trying to ruin us?
George, be quiet. You're upsetting your sister.
How elegant George looks.
Yes, he inherited Cousin Sebastian's whole wardrobe, but everything else is in probate. Did you know that everything else is in probate, and Aunt Vi can keep it there just as long as she wants to?
Where is that Violet?
Well, George, come over here. Violet's on her way down.
Yeah, and Violet has an elevator now.
Yes, she had an elevator installed where the back stairs are, and it is just the cutest little thing you ever did see. Only thing is, there's only room for 2 people at a time in it, so George and I came down on foot. I think she's having her frozen daiquiri. You know, she still has a frozen daiquiri promptly at 5 o'clock every afternoon in the world in warm weather. Now, look, the horrible death of Sebastian just about killed her. She's slightly better now, but it's a matter of time. And, dear, you know, I'm sure you understand why we haven't been out to see you at St. Mary's. They said you were too disturbed, and a family visit might disturb you more. But I want you to know that nobody in the whole city knows a thing, not a thing about what you've been through. Why, not a soul even knows you're back from Europe. Now, sister, listen to me. I want you to be very careful what you say to your Aunt Violet about what happened to Sebastian in Cabeza de Lobo.
What do you want me to say about what?
Well, just don't repeat that fantastic story. For my sake and George's sake, for the sake of your brother and your mother, please don't repeat that horrible story. Not to Aunt Violet, will you?
Then I'm going to have to tell Aunt Violet what happened to her son in Cabeza de Lobo?
Oh, honey, that's why you're here. She insisted on hearing it straight from you.
You were the only witness to it, Kathy.
No, there were others that ran.
Oh, sister, you just are having a little nightmare about it. Now, listen to me, sister. Sebastian has bequeathed to you and George in his will.
To each of us, 50 grand after taxes. Get it?
Oh, yes, but if they give me an injection, I won't have any choice but to tell exactly what happened last summer. Don't you see, I won't have any choice but to tell the truth. It makes you tell the truth because it shuts something off that might make you able not to, and everything comes out.
Oh, Kathy, I don't know the whole story, but surely you're not too sick in your head to know in your heart that story you've been telling is just too...
Kathy, you got to drop that story, can't you? For your 50 grand?
Oh. If Aunt Vi contests the will, and we know she'll contest it, she could keep it in the courts forever, and we'll be penniless.
It's in probate now, and you'll never get out of probate unless you quit that damn story. We can't afford to hire lawyers good enough to contest it, so if you don't drop that story, we won't have a pot to cook greens in.
Oh, Catherine, don't laugh like that. It scares me, Catherine.